meeting, we've been approved for 1 hour of continuing education. So let's get going with our panelists that we have. As I mentioned earlier, the office environment certainly is different today than it was in 2019 or even in 2020. So a lot has happened. I'm looking forward to hearing from this group. Anna Koskren, who is going to be leading the effort, is a principal at NTH with 22 years of experience. She provides organizations with the most informed, innovative, and competitive solutions possible. In addition to helping clients fully realize their real estate options, Anna heads up NTH's business development effort. We appreciate all the insight and effort Anna puts into assembling a panel and coordinating this presentation for us each year. Many hours of time and creativity are invested in preparing for this event. She was just talking about they had a practice run even, so I'm very impressed that you guys have really done this. Very excited to have her join us, so Anna, if you can take it away.
Thank you, sir. I kind of feel like you should say, okay, now lower your expectations because you made us sound really great and polished. Okay. So yeah, Anna Koskren, partner at NTH. NTH has been moderating this for as long as I can remember. That's a long time, but super fun and interesting to do it this year. Last year we did all hybrid. This year we're back in person, so excited about that. And before we jump into it, this is really about the office market. Just wanted to say we really appreciate everything that BOMA members do, the building engineers, all those folks who kind of stayed on the work site and we're doing stuff. Well, a lot of us were at home working remotely, so keeping those buildings clean, updating HVAC systems, updating tenant amenities, things that would help bring people back. So really appreciate all that everyone does. Okay, let me see if I can do the slide. Yeah. Okay, quick show of hands. It's January. Who does New Year's resolutions? Okay, not a lot. I don't, so I'm I ask. But interesting thing. I think everyone knows it takes a while to get a new habit going. So they say about 28 days really to form a new habit. So we're on January 20th. That means you got 8 days to go and your habit's pretty solid. But they really say it takes about 65, 66 days for that to become well-established and become automatic. And the reason I'm mentioning that is we're going to talk about what's going on in the office market. And if you do some quick COVID math, today's January 20th. For most of us, our last kind of normal day of going to the office and walking the nut was March 13th of 2020. So that's 678 days of new habits. So the habit of not coming to the office is pretty well established. Now the question is how do we get people back to the office? So we got a lot of answers, a lot of really good comments from the panel up here, but this is also our first global pandemic, so we have our magic 8 ball. If we're stuck on trying to figure out what the predictions are, we'll use that as needed. So let me introduce the panel. What we're going to do, they'll each have some prepared remarks, and then we'll go to kind of a discussion Q&A format. So I'm going to start with Brent. Brent's going to talk about national trends. Brent's at JLL, has been there since 2011, managing director on the agency leasing team. And on average, Brent and their teams, Group 7, complete over 100 transactions annually. So got good data points to kind of bring some perspective to this. And Brent also supports JLL's capital market division. I asked people, since we're asking them, what's the outlook? Well, tell me time. They get a lot of stuff right, but you guys get some stuff wrong too. So Brent, on March 16th of 2020, told John Dahl, his business partner, that COVID would be over in 2 weeks. I'll hold it again so I know some of the things I'll share. I think it's pretty good. Okay, so Andrew is going to talk about local insights. So Brent's talking national trends, Andrew's bringing it more local. He's a director at Newmark's Minneapolis office, and his focus is on real estate advisory for clients. He provides services to fast-growing and large tenants and occupiers in both the local market and across the country. So he and his team in 2020 combined to negotiate over 1 million square feet of lease transactions. So lots of good information. Oh yeah, and he made a prediction. He said Gillespie wouldn't move from Shoreview but bring their headquarters down from Minneapolis. Also wrong. Okay, and last but not least, so if Brent and Andrew are talking about kind of what we're seeing on the brokerage side, Deanne's going to give us the perspective of what you're seeing in the workplace. What is some of this doing now you're getting people in this space? She is a workplace market leader at Gensler with 25 years of interior experience. We've worked on some deals together, which is great. You guys too. Except for Brent always represents the landlords too strongly, and I'm on the tenant side, but we won't hold it against Okay, Deanne, broad range of experience, projects with expertise in financial, legal, tech, and in addition to landlord services and building repositions. She made a prediction about who would have the most last minute changes to their slides, but for sense of kind of harmony among her family, I won't tell you who she said. Okay, with that, Brent, there we go. Why don't we let you get going on your part? Oh. You want that one or yours?
What did you use?
I used that one.
Yeah, I use this one.
And then
You guys
just
hear me
that
okay?
side.
Yeah, better, right? Okay. And for the record, so we have a team meeting every Monday, and John Dahl walks in on March 16th, and for those of you who don't know him, he was a reward. He was like, oh my gosh, this thing, oh my, I'm like, dude, 2 weeks, this thing will blow past. He still reminds me of it. So Anna told me to do this in 5. I got a little late start, so I'll do it in 2.5 minutes.
Go for it.
The one thing I will say about the office recovery across the country, JLL research is telling us is that it's super uneven. And a lot of the graphs I'm going to show you are going to reflect that. This first graph, and again, all these graphs are almost going to make these available, so don't feel like you have to memorize all these graphs. This first graph just shows the net absorption since the red is basically Q2 2020 through Q4 2021. And what it's showing is basically we've got negative net absorption, then sort of going positive, less negative. Q4 2021, nationally, we saw 5.4 million square feet of positive absorption, okay? We have turned the corner nationally. We are no longer bleeding. We are now positively absorbing office space, which is a great thing for office owners. The second measure is leasing activity. So we saw leasing activity rise 9.2% in Q4 of 2021. So meaning there's more and more showings, there's more and more activity. What JLL tracks nationally is all the active users in all the major markets. And this graph shows, again, over the last 5 quarters, that leasing activity has continued to rise. And it rose 9.2% just over from Q4 to Q3. Q3 was like 7.3 over Q2. So this trend hopefully is going to continue as we work through the pandemic and the pandemic becomes an endemic. Sublease. A lot of you building managers and owners probably saw a lot of your tenants put sublease on the market. This graph shows, again, if you look at Q2, we saw 7.3%, Q3 of 2020, 21%, and then less and less, and to the point from Q3 of this year, we saw actually 1.6% of the sublease space come off the market. Either it was absorbed or the users just took it off the market. And we had net zero additional sublease being put on the market last quarter. Again, a trend showing the recovery is not just on its way, it's here. Despite a slight slowdown in Q4, growth markets are ahead of the pack with a 9.3% faster return to normal. This graph just shows 3 different markets. The gateway markets, New York, DC, and I have a graph later that will show you these different markets. The growth markets, Austin, Nashville, Raleigh, Durham, and then the U.S. overall. So the next slide really shows, here are call it the 10 growth markets and the 7 gateway markets. And the positive absorption versus the negative absorption, job growth in these regions is totally opposite. These growth markets are seeing a much quicker recovery, they're seeing much bigger job growth. The gateway markets, the New Yorks, the DCs, San Francisco's, the major markets that rely a ton on mass transit, the recovery has been much slower. And the job growth has been much slower. Here's just a quick example of movement of a lot of these companies, and these are not all full-on headquarter relocations, they could be divisions. But what you're seeing is the red dots on the East Coast and the West Coast, so call it New York, Boston, and then the West Coast, Seattle, San Francisco, LA. A lot of these companies, Google, Amazon, Toyota, CBRE, they're moving from the gateways to these growth markets, which I showed you on the previous slide. Flight to quality, and Andrew's going to talk about this locally, but this is a real thing. So this slide shows of all the absorption the office market has seen nationally, and this one goes back to the 1960s. Since 2015 to the present, the vast majority of the absorption is in buildings that have been built since 2015. Okay, that's a real stat. So the newer buildings are getting the vast majority of the positive absorption in the office market nationally. And And the rent, the discrepancy before premium rent for new space versus existing space just continues to be a big spread, and we're just seeing that spread become bigger and bigger and bigger. We're seeing it nationally, and again, Andrew's going to talk about how we're seeing it locally. A couple other positive things. You're going to hear it. We didn't see a huge drop in net rental rate from March of 2020 to today. What we did see, and we've been continuing to see, is an increase in concessions, free rent, tenant improvement dollars, etc. And a lot of short-term deals. You know, my phone was ringing with Brent. My client's lease is up in June of 21. Can we just do a one-year renewal? We just don't know what the world's going to be like. But over the last 3 quarters, we've seen the average lease term increase to 7.8 years. And you can see that dip about at the end of 2020 when it was down to 6.7 years. So it's continued to grow back to longer term. And concession packages nationally are down. Particularly for free rent and TI, we're seeing that. We believe that's a product because a lot of the deals that are getting done in the nicer buildings, the new product, the flight to quality. And so when there's not as many good options, landlords have a little bit more leverage to offer less concessions and less free rent because there's just less competition. And where's that absorption coming from, Brent? When companies are adding space and taking it down, the vast majority nationally is technology. And the Minneapolis-St. Paul is well positioned. We have a great tech community here. We have a lot of organic companies that start here, grow here. Sometimes they get bought and move, sometimes they get bought and stay. But technology is leading the pack in terms of the vast amount of absorption, representing 21% of quarterly activity just last quarter. So, in summary, it really depends on what market nationally you're in right now. I had a client I was talking to this morning. They have it's a national firm, national professional services firm. They have offices all around the globe. They said, Brent, we're trying to get people back. What can you do to help us? I said, well, we're working on, can we help subsidize parking? Can you help, whatever it is, can we get more access to the training rooms? And I asked him, I go, what percentage of your employees are currently coming? This is a downtown tenant. I said, what percentage of your employees are currently coming downtown with badge swipes? He goes, Brent, it's 9%. I go, how does that equate to some of your other markets? He goes, in Miami, it's 50%. In Atlanta, it's 40%. And he goes, we don't know why it's 9% in the Twin Cities, but as the owner, we'd love to partner with you, just help us bring these people back. And I can tell you, my owner's they're gonna work with them. A lot of you managers, like Anna said, have been in the building since March of 2020, and that's not lost on us as leasing agents because you guys have been in the front line, and where a lot of us have been working from home. But I think now as we try to help each other, tenants, landlords, owners with this recovery, it's really partnering and figuring out ways and doing things maybe we haven't done just to get people back at the office. So things are looking up nationally, and now I'm going to pass it off to Andrew. He's a junior at St. John's on the change room. So, part of the hockey team. So.
I know, it looks like my senior year of prom, that photo that was up. So, I'm going to talk about the Minneapolis suburban and downtown market. Not as positive as the national trends, but there are some good things. So, I'm going to start with a little recap on 2021. I've got a photo of, I'm sure you all recognize him, Rocky Balboa. I see a lot of similarities between Rocky and our clients, specifically the decision makers that we're talking to. It feels like the past 2 years they've been working really hard to figure out the best solution for their employees to come back to the office safely, to make them feel comfortable. What does our hybrid model look like? And I think finally, at the end of 2021, we started to realize, and this is just from a tenant rep's perspective, boots on the ground, dealing with tenants on a daily basis, that they're ready to jump into the ring like Rock and start to make some decisions and say, hey, we're going to downsize, or we're going to relocate to higher quality buildings, or completely shut down our office. I think we're starting to see decision makers finally say, okay, time to figure it out. Now, jumping into the numbers here, total market vacancy, we're at 18.1%. You can see on the graph there that we've been trending up. That's no surprise to any of you since early 2020. Now, alluding to what Brent was saying on a national level, rental rates have been holding Specifically, the Class A buildings, I think, have been driving the growth in the rental rates. The flight to quality is really, it's real, and we're seeing it, and tenants are willing to pay more for better experience, and so we're seeing the Class A rates jump. The average across the board is just under $30 gross. Now diving into absorption, these numbers look a little scary. I tell you that the reason for the 2.355 is due to Target leaving City Center, vacating City Center. That was, of course, a big hit, just under 1 million square feet. We've seen six consecutive quarters of negative absorption. Hopefully, we're seeing a similar trend to the national trends in that next quarter. We're hopefully in the green on the other side. Now, just to dive into some specific companies that made moves during 2021. I, of course, mentioned that now it feels like groups are going to start making decisions. Well, these were bold groups, and they did make some decisions. And to point to a couple of them, Fulcrum, for example, they're a fast-growing technology company in Baker Center. They're in about 5,000 square feet, and they're outgrowing the space. They needed to relocate. They wanted a new image, and they had employees working remotely, and their average age at Fulcrum is 28. And the CEO realized, I cannot be having these 28-year-olds be sitting in their North Loop studio or one-bedroom apartment looking at the wall, because they're going to leave my company. And so he decided that he wanted to take a full floor at IDS on the 46th floor. Thanks, Brent, for helping get that one done. And now it's become a tool for him for recruiting. These 28-year-olds want to be hanging out in the cafeteria overlooking the city and finishing up work and opening up the fridge and grabbing some drinks and doing it again the next day. So that's one story. Health Systems moving from a single-story kind of flex building in Eden Prairie to a completely new environment at a renovated building in Eden Prairie, multi-tenant Class A building. EY, another good example, moving from US Bank Plaza to Dayton's. So I could go on all day about these groups relocating to more highly amenitized buildings. So what will 2022 look like? Sorry to make everyone relive this. I just wanted to give a little context. So, of course, 2020 hits, I think it was March 13th. You said, Anna, that was our last day. Then we're locked down. And then I took little snippets of articles that I was looking up in May 2020 when we were all locked down. One article was, "The Office is Dead." August of 2020, pandemic-driven virtual conferences may be here to stay. October 2020, here's one Twin Cities employers say they might return to the office. 2021, vaccines roll out. We think we're in the clear, right? Delta variant hits. Companies delay their return. And then, of course, January 2022, here we are, and Omicron is lingering. So my point here is, I don't think any of us know, and it's TBD, but we can only hope for the best, right? I think that these groups are going to be the ones who will help drive companies back downtown Minneapolis. So just for some quick stats, in the top 15 employers, they employ over 50,000 people in the CBD, and they make up 23% of downtown employees. So for a little bit of color in the market, Target's a great example. We are talking to a number of Target vendors that are in US Bank Corp, Cell Plaza, PwC Plaza, that are saying, hey, Target's not back, why should we come back? Target is now, I believe that they're working remotely indefinitely. So a lot of these Target vendors are saying, all right, we're either going to downsize, or we're going to move to co-working, or we're going to relocate to the suburbs, or we're just not going to have an office. And so I think as soon as these employers can start bringing people back in mass numbers, that's really going to help drive tenants, the smaller tenants, coming back downtown Minneapolis. And then finally, what do I see in 2022 as an outlook? I think these three markets are the micro markets to watch. I think North Loop, like Brent was talking about, just the flight to quality. Look at the Nordic, look at North Loop Green. I think these are going to be really popular projects that tenants are going to be considering. The West End, 10 West End, they've done really well. I think they're going to announce another large tenant that's going to be relocating there soon. 494 in France. A number of projects down there that, of course, Centennial Lake Southsburg, not a new development, but a project that has been connected to France Avenue in a better way through the City of Edina's work recently. So I think these are the three micro markets to watch. Tenants who are going to be considering relocating somewhere, I know that these will be on their list as options. Now I'll turn it over to Deanne for all the good stuff.
Great, thank you. All right. So, now that we've looked at stats nationally, looked at the local market, what could this mean for the future of workplace? And notice it says, what could this mean, not what will this mean? We are still in a moment when you look at workplace design and how all of this information translates into physical space in the built environment. The coming year of 2022, we're in this moment of observation, curiosity, discovery, beta testing some things, doing pilot programs, and like the little slide of Rocky running to the race, we are seeing decision makers ready to move on something, rather than sitting still as many have done in 2020 and 2021. People are now looking to have more of a call to action. But with that, there's still an influx of questions that are still coming up. What does this mean? What does flexibility look like? What does innovation look like? How do we retain our culture, both, for those coming into the office, those still remaining virtually? How are we recruiting? How are we retaining talent? As we all know, the Great Resignation and everything happening around that. What does this all mean? There's a lot of questions, and Gensler, over 15 years at the core of our in-house research institute, it is studying the future of workplace. But even with that, we don't have all the answers right now. We're exploring, we're studying. Just our whole in-house research department, they're not all architects and designers. Some of them are anthropologists, sociologists, economists, all of that in-house to just continue to study this. And then put the creativity to work. So what does that mean? How are things shifting? What needs to change to respond to the situation we're in? We just recently launched our latest survey. It's a U.S. survey centered around workplace. Well, we've done international, but our winter 2021 survey that was just recently published, you can go to gensler.com, go into our research and insights tab. This information, you can download the full report, which is quite fascinating. It gets into detail around sector and some really good data points to that. That's for anyone to download, so encourage you to go there. However, wanted to share this slide. When we look at the rankings of everything, just this human interaction and this face-to-face sort of collaboration is still kind of a top-ranked data point in our research. More so when you look internationally and you start looking in the UK, Australia, China, all over. Look at this number one. People are still drawn to come to some physical environment for this face-to-face connection. Digital interface is not going away. It will be, still prevalent, but these face-to-face moments are going to be really, really key in built environments. And what's drawing you there? Dynamic, flexible spaces that support a multitude of uses and ways of working is going to need to remain at the forefront. Oh. There we go. So when we kind of look at the new role of the office, when you look at, traditional workplace, pre-COVID, we were starting to move into kind of some progressive models. Where we're kind of entering now is this reimagined space. And to kind of sum up all the data points at the bottom here, at the epicenter of it all is really an experience. And when you look at the micro markets to watch and where people are going, think about what's around in those areas and the experiences and so forth that drive some of that. That also plays a role into the bigger picture of everything. So I'm gonna quickly kind of go through these slides with the surveys and the research and the things that Gensler has been doing over, the course of this entire pandemic. What does this all mean when it's translated to an actual design solution? And key drivers we see really propelling forward as we're in this moment of beta testing, discovery, exploring, etc. This reworked space. Looking at things where you're not necessarily designing to be anchored into a fixed workstation, but creating neighborhood communities, areas of flexibility where things can kind of morph into multi-purpose. That was here pre-pandemic, but certainly in the moment we're in right now, how are you having much more interface of technology, equity of presence? When you're in the office, how are you creating a space that not only are you drawn to, but it's a place where you feel you belong, and it can support diverse work modes. I think everyone working at home, you kind of found you can work from home in a way you choose to work. But there's a lot of other things that a workplace, a physical workplace offers that home may not, with daylight and ergonomics and certain things like that. Responsive space. How is space designed to respond to change? Things will continue to evolve. How is space designing to that? And how we're seeing that is the whole kit of parts, from digital interface, technology, furniture kit of parts. All of that needs to almost fit together like Legos, where you can kind of disassemble and reassemble, shift, adapt, change. Again, we're in this moment of exploration. We're working with clients across the country and even in this local market where they want to kind of beta test certain things. Different departments work differently. There is not going to be a one answer that kind of fits all of workplace. It's really prevalent to the business that you're in, your overall culture, your demographics. There's a lot of driving factors. However, innovation accelerator, it's been proven, to really truly create innovation and move things forward in all types of business, whether it's the tech industry, financial industry, legal industry, etc. Innovation happens much more organically and maybe in more of a faster fashion, more productive fashion when you have face-to-face sort of connection points or physical space that truly supports and inspires that. Vitality and learning is going to continue to be in the forefront. And this, when we look at all of these points, this is not just for a physical office space. Think of the infrastructure of a building. What is the new set of amenities that buildings need to look to? Having obviously some of the givens, the conferencing, the training, etc. Absolutely. However, looking at these dynamic, we call it flex office areas, those are great amenity offerings that buildings should be looking to, and not just having one amenity floor, have different experiences, things that kind of respond to different activities and different needs, and kind of pepper those amenities throughout your assets. So think of it as an ecosystem of a lifestyle that can support these modes of working. Wellness and sustainability are going to continue to be at the forefront. Again, this was here, but now it's even deeper. It's into the infrastructure of a building. The story of what's the indoor air quality, what filters are you using? These are questions that end users are asking, and you may not be able to physically see them when you're walking through a space, but people want to know what is the infrastructure and things all around this holistic notion of wellness and well-being. And then with everything is just kind of this hospitality component, either within the office or in your amenity set of a building, and not just having it, but progressive food and beverage options. Much more diverse offerings, cultural offerings. How are you embracing the community and small businesses and bringing that into the whole sort of broader set package is going to continue to be driving factors. So this is just a dashboard of kind of what's up, what's down, where things are at. And again, as we mentioned, you know, this slide deck will be sent out. So you'll have this information, and then certainly encourage you to visit the website and download some of those reports. Coming up at the end of January, we will be launching our 2022 design forecast. It's a huge thing that Gensler does, and that will be on our website as well. So I'm excited to share that. So thank you.
Great job. Thank you. Okay, thank you guys for sharing some good information. And we've got about 10 minutes left, so what we're going to do is just, I think, take some of those concepts and bring it into a larger conversation. And Brent, I want to start with you. So you've got, turn your, oh, you can hear you. I know you work with some of the capital markets also. Okay, I would like to see you guys at the same time. Can you talk to us a little bit about kind of how the last 2 years have affected investor sentiment? And we talked a little bit about it yesterday, but you know, what were people talking about 6 months ago versus 6 weeks ago, and how have things been impacted?
Yeah, so on the office side, in 2020, there was so few trades. And talked to a lot of our capital markets team, and there was a black eye on the Twin Cities. In 2021, that changed. We've had some suburban trades, one Southwest Crossing, North Loop, the Swervo portfolio traded, River Place, but we haven't had any in the CBD. So everybody's looking for data. I was just talking to Kevin about this. Everybody's looking for data. Now there's a couple buildings that are going to come into the market. There's some suburban Class A product. There's some CBD Class A product. There's a big gap right now between bid and ask, okay? And I think it's gonna be very difficult for the product, unless it's a, Thrivent traded at a sub 5 cap. Well, that's, a huge 20-year lease. I mean, you're buying the credit. Those are gonna, and product like that will continue to trade. It's something that's got a little value add, it's got a little hair, and for an investor to go into an investment committee and get challenged, okay, well, show me some data on why this is a good buy. There is no data. So we need to start creating the data, and I think over 2022, you're going to see some buildings come out in the market, and once kind of that data gets created, I think we'll see that momentum pick up, but I think it's going to be a tricky 2022. I think some stuff's going to trade, I think some stuff's not.
Great. Okay, let's keep going with that theme of kind of a gap between expectations. So Andrew and I both work more on the tenant side, so we have a bias, but what are you seeing as far as kind of COVID discount on rental rates? Are people's expectations lined up with reality? Is it a tenant's market? And then Brett, you can disagree with the math.
I disagree with you to say. I think back to the point about rental rates going up, I think the majority of the landlords in CBD and Class A product in the suburbs have been successful in holding firm on their asking rates. But they've been willing to offer more on the free rent, the TI packages, or just larger concession packages is really what we're seeing. And Anna and I were talking about this yesterday, and that a lot of our clients have this expectation in their head because they see all the headlines in the news that office space is dead, that they're going to go out and get a great deal. And it can be challenging at times to have to set those expectations with your client that, listen, rental rates are holding, your rent is not changing. We might be able to negotiate a larger concession package, but the rate is going to stay where it's at.
Well, and I'll add on to that, we were talking about it, especially that small to medium-sized firm, they've got the perception that, hey, there's got to be all kinds of sublease options with great new furniture that's hardly been used, and you can find me 5 options to look at. And the expectation level, and it's hard for somebody to say, hey, I'm working for you and trying to get you a great option, but I got to disagree with some of your baseline assumptions. So there's a lot of work we got to do behind the scenes. Do you want to comment anything on COVID discounts?
COVID discounts exist on properties that tenants don't want. So market's a range, okay? As a landlord rep, I'm always trying to get a deal at the highest end of that range, and Andrew's trying to get a deal down at the lowest end of that range. But depending on the building and where it's positioned and occupancy levels,
My job is easier to get, IDS center. It's always in demand. It's always it's always well occupied. I have other buildings at least that are, I will tell my owner to accept a deal with Andrew down here. The difference I'm hearing from the tenant reps is pre-pandemic, they go out, they tour 8 buildings, they shortlist 5, they space plan 3, and then they would try to get the best economics at one of those 3, because any one of those 3 could work. Where now, and Andrew can disagree with me, because then I'll listen to him anyway. Now, the tenants are saying, hey, here's my budget, give me the best building you can get, give me the best amenities, I know I can get a deal to go into building X, but building X is a Class B building, I know it's cheap, but the corridors are old, the elevators don't work, the HVAC sucks, so I think that's one shift in tenant dynamic, is they're trying to get the best building they can afford.
Yep.
Would you agree?
Well, I'm curious if you guys would agree. I'd also say for existing tenants, if they've got a good relationship with the landlord, they feel like the landlord's they're partnering through all of this, whether it's in, as you talked, updating some cleaning standards, or we had to do some rent relief, or any of those things, that really helps build that partnership, which makes it a very different conversation. If it felt like the landlord kind of turned their back on them, or isn't helping help attract employees back, it's a much quicker conversation to talk about moving. So partnering up to the leasing team and the building management is super important, I think, to help retain. Same as employers want to retain talent, I think buildings retaining tenants somewhere. Okay, so Dee, I think we know that we're unlikely to come back to everyone being here 5 days a week, but how do folks embrace kind of a hybrid work model, and how do you make that physical office be a focus of helping draw folks back? I mean, again, health concerns are health concerns. We got to do this safely.
Right.
How does space help?
Well, what we see with clients that we're working with is it is about what do we need to do to get people back, and it is looking at beyond just the physical design, but we're as a design advisor really aligned with HR teams more than we ever have been, and it's more, again, going back to this ecosystem of social programming and different things that are happening in the workplace. And then going back to the amenities within the building, what's very attractive is if you have flexible, diverse amenities, that's appealing to an end user if they can adapt some of their leasable area and not be redundant with that in their space, but the building can offer a multitude of options to support physical and hybrid. It's about different modes, and we're seeing with how that's being done, if you look at the old floor plate, kind of looking at a 1-to-1 ratio, everyone's got their anchor desk, and you come in, you got a few meeting rooms. We're seeing it much more organic and open, and think of it just like a true kind of full holistic sort of work cafe. Yes, you still have workstations, but maybe it's not a 1-to-1 because you're understanding what department are you in, what suits your lifestyle, what's flexible with your sort of day-to-day work schedule, and when you're going to be in the office, when you're not going to be in the office, and then looking at it not necessarily a 1-to-1 workstation seat, but think of it as a multitude of places that support activity-based design that you can go work. So that could be at the Tower Club, at the 41st floor of IDS, or it could be in your physical lease space, wherever it is. Those sort of diverse offerings are supporting this sort of hybrid, but it needs to be equipped with the right technology to make it all happen.
Sounds like a lot of talk about experience, about that experience.
Yep, experience, and a lot of our clients that we're working with are opting for at least a minimum of 1 day, where it's kind of everyone's in the office on that 1 day, so there is that synergistic thing, for companies that are back, they are choosing, seems Wednesday's the day, but that's what we're seeing.
I know one company, I thought this was interesting, they said they want everyone on Monday +1. But their idea was if you get them in the beginning of the week, they may come more. So, I think everyone's trying different strategies, and we're all gonna have to kind of see which works. Okay, Fred, what's the number one amenity? Well, actually, what are you hearing from tenants? The tenants want, or are you going to landlords and saying, hey, we should add this or do this to help keep attracting the tenants?
The number one amenity is flexibility.
Yeah,
And
short-term leases are a good idea.
Yeah, but I know that's not exactly what the answer you're looking for, but I would say that the fitness center has fallen off. We need it, but it's not a high priority. The training center is important, but it's fallen off. Some people heard me say this. I think the boardroom is being replaced by the the war room. We don't need a 12-person, I have a 12-person boardroom. And I can do a boardroom meeting over Zoom. I can't collaborate and innovate in a boardroom. I need a war room. I need whiteboards and screens and a round table, and we're adding that in one of our buildings. So I would say the war room, and then the third workplace, the tenant lounge. That's huge to get people into the building. So those would be the two things.
Andrew, anything to add from what you're hearing from tenants?
No, I would agree. I think I always point to my office at the Fish Street Towers, on our third floor, and the 150 tower is phenomenal. To Brent's point, I think that has not changed since pre-pandemic. I think everyone is looking for that tenant lounge, IDS, the 41st floor. That's just another area for your tenant to go. I would say location, though, not just amenities at the building, but the location too is very important, just to be walkable. I think I've heard that a lot from tenants recently, that they want to be able to walk in the North Loop or walk in the West End to different retail amenities. How about you, Anna? What have you heard?
I agree with all of you. How's that? Because we're running out of time. Okay. We like to always end this every year with kind of predictions, like what are you thinking about going on in the future? So Brent provided this slide, but I'm going to save you for last. But I'm going to make it a little harder on them. I'm going to say the Magic 8 Ball is going to be the answer, then they have to give the question that goes with this. So Dee, let's start with you.
Okay.
I cannot see this. I used to be younger.
I need reading glasses, I got them here.
Well, I just think the Magic 8 Ball doesn't want to.
So we don't have an answer, no answer.
All signs point to yes. All signs point to yes. So what's that?
All signs point to yes, that the office is here to stay. This isn't going to be a complete obsolete thing. We just may need to do a Control-Alt-Delete and a hard reboot. That's
Okay.
my prediction.
Andrew, most likely. What is most likely in the next 12 to 18 months?
That's tough.
You don't have to be right, just come on.
All right, more than 50% of the top 15 employers in Minneapolis will be at least hybrid working.
I think it'll be a new normal, because I think we're telling people, don't think we're coming back 5 days a week full time.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, I like that. Let's see what I comes through. Oh, right, you got the certain yes.
Certain yes.
Yeah. I want to ask you about spec buildings and North Loop Green and all, so if you can work that in, go for it, but you got about 12 seconds.
Certain yes, that North Loop Green will announce a new office tenant in 2022. And sometime in 2022 or 2023, there'll be a new spec office building announced in Twin Cities area.
Okay, I like it. You heard it here, don't mark it up late. I think we're
I
going to
like
wrap
it.
up with that.
Yeah, that's a good ending.
Yeah, okay.